everybody. Welcome back to English Champion. On this episode, I want to share an article that just came out the other day. Has to do with college students and a topic that we've covered here many times, but there's some new data that's come out that I think just confirms much of what we've already known and thought. And what I'm going to do, though, is not just leave it at that. I'm going to add to it an assignment that you can do with students that I've done for many years with my college students. You could do this at the high school level. That I think really helps students understand where this topic could kind of really help us understand ourselves better in our social situation, because this is about technology. And what this article is going to offer is not a lot of help in remedying this problem. It's just going to describe the problem. And so this assignment that I'm going to share with you, I think, can really help students understand it better. And you'll not only get a little bit of a writing and research assignment out of it, but maybe you can help your young people just cope with their own personal and social situations a bit better. So this is an article from Inside Higher Ed, and it's just simply titled "Social Media Linked to Student Loneliness." There's some a new really big research study that came out. Now, I think one thing that I'd be very curious about, and I don't know what the other research is on this before I get into the social media element of this, is I wonder if there's a general trend of loneliness, especially across young people, regardless of social media use. I wonder if they could extract out the social media element of this and determine if people are just in general lonelier than they perhaps used to be 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago. I don't know. I'd have to look into that because I always find it interesting. I don't think of loneliness maybe in the way that some people might. And I just think back to when I was younger and or even as an adult now, I don't think I've ever felt lonely, which is very interesting because I'm not somebody who's a super social person. I don't have a lot of friends. I've always only had a couple friends, close friends. I've never been a part of like large social organizations or clubs or just groups that kind of facilitate getting to know people and just hanging out and stuff like that. I've never been a part of any of that stuff, and yet. Even when I was by myself as a single young man living thousands of miles from my family and friends, completely alone, at no point did I ever feel lonely. So I don't know what it is about the loneliness definition of what does that exactly mean? Are people today just more sensitive to it for a variety of reasons that they think, well, I'm alone and I don't have that many friends, so therefore I must be lonely. I don't know what that is. This would require a little more investigation into how they define it. But for me, I've never felt lonely, even when I was alone for long periods of time, because I just don't mind it. I like reading, which is a solitary thing. I like writing, which is a solitary thing. I like going to the movies and I like exercising. Like these are all things I can do by myself that give me great fulfillment and meaning and are useful things to pass time. And so I've never, even when I've been alone, I've never felt lonely. So how are these young people defining loneliness? How are the researchers defining it? The article doesn't really say, but the key is that it links it to social media, which for anyone with half a brain should go, yeah, no kidding. Obviously, that is what we've been seeing the last few years. And of course, the great irony is that it's called social media, and yet somehow the opposite thing is happening. People are feeling less social. They're actually feeling more lonely. So this came out of the University of Cincinnati. And the ultimate argument is that, or the finding is that the social media is particularly likely to lead to people feeling isolated. The study found that spending just 16 hours a week, a little more than 2 hours a day on social media, was linked with higher odds of loneliness. Now, to old people like me, 16 hours a week on social media, that sounds like, that's insanity. That's over 2 hours a day. I don't even know what are you looking at for 2 hours a day on social media? That just seems so... I'm not going to say wasteful because we all do things that are time wasters, but what social media is just so frivolous and dumb. I don't know why young people, in this case because it's college students, why you would be spending so much time. And 16 hours a week is the low end of this. So we'll see how it gets worse as the hours per week go up. The lady who did this is a professor at Ohio University. I wish I could say I was shocked. I wish I could say that this was a surprising finding, but this was what I was expecting to see. The research is based on 65,000 students aged 18 to 24 across more than 120 colleges. So this is a very large study. This isn't a small thing where they're, kind of just extrapolating out some result that they assume. this is pretty solid research. So it says loneliness was measured by asking students how often they felt left out, lacked companionship, or felt isolated. Again, is that just something with the culture that's separate from social media though? Like, do people feel that way generally? Because we live in a culture now where there's always something going on. You're constantly inundated with stuff, and so whenever there's a tiny bit of a downtime with that, you suddenly feel lonely and you're left out. I'm not sure, where people just don't know how to spend time alone anymore. I don't know what that would be about if it were to be separated out of the social media element here. Students were also asked how many hours they spent on social media in a typical week, of course. About 13% of students were classified as excessive users, defined as spending at least 16 hours a week on social media. So that was 13%. That seems low. I wouldn't be surprised if it were higher than that, but let's just go with what the study says. The more time they spent online, the higher the odds were of reporting loneliness. So the other breakdown categories were those who used it for 16 to 20 hours a week were 19% more likely to say they were lonely than those who didn't use it at all. Those who spent 21 to 25 hours a week were 23% more likely. Students who spent 26 to 30 hours were 34% more likely to report feeling lonely. And the heaviest users, those spending at least 30 hours a week on social media, were 38% more likely to report feeling lonely. 30 hours a week. That's pretty amazing. So we're, over 4 hours a day just on social media. That, like, again, I don't even know what you're doing. What is there to do for 4 hours a day on social media? That sounds horrible to us old folks. The author, her name is Hill, noted that the data doesn't show a direct causal relationship, but the findings point to a clear association. She's right, it doesn't. However, other people have done more of a causal analysis, because the question could be, well, is it that lonely people tend to use social media more? Like, if I'm already lonely, I don't fit in, I'm separated, I live in a rural place, you just don't have a lot of friend groups, whatever. You're more likely to use social media because you already feel lonely. So does the causal connection go that way? Does it go from loneliness to using social media, or does it go from social media using causes loneliness? She's saying it doesn't show a direct relationship. It's more correlative. However, other people have pretty well shown it. Jonathan Haidt, Jean Twenge, these other psychologists have pretty clearly demonstrated that once you factor out people who are already feeling lonely using social media even more, the results kind of tend to bend toward, no, this causal relationship goes in that direction. That social media tends to cause people to feel lonely. Again, it's not everyone, it's not all the time, but it tends to do that. And at the highest number, it said 38% more likely. So that's pretty big, especially over, 65,000 students. So a lot of people out there feeling more lonely the more they use social media. Hill said female students may experience loneliness differently because of how often and how many of them use social media. Research has shown that females do tend to use social media more than male students, and sometimes even the way they use it might differ, so that could change how they feel about it in their social connections. So again, other scholars have reported this as well, that not only do females use these platforms more, but they also report more instances of not only loneliness, but anxiety, depressive feelings, all those kinds of things. So yeah, this is a real female problem, especially because not only if they're using it more, then it's going to make their feelings of loneliness even higher. Talks about some other demographics. Again, not something we would be that surprised about. However, it concludes with, here's what colleges can do, all right? The study said that institutions should educate students on the effects of social media and encourage them to restrict their use. All right, so the education part is the problem here, and that's why I'm going to give you a little assignment you can use with students that helps with the education process, not just about social media, but any form of technology, because it's all connected. Because what it's about to offer, I don't think is super helpful, but you can decide. She says, unfortunately, social media use is an individual-based activity, so it has to be motivated by the individual. The best we can do is encourage, educate, and make sure they're aware of the time limits they can set on social media. So this is nothing new. This has been around for a long time, where they're like, you need to set a timer or put in the restrictions into the settings that it blocks you from using it at certain hours of the day, or after you've been on it for 30 minutes, it automatically kicks you off. Like, you can put in all these things. It doesn't matter, okay? People are going to use it regardless. the point that she makes there about an individual-based activity kind of goes to really the underlying philosophical foundations of this, which is, the Marshall McLuhan idea. The medium is the message. And so when we think about, well, what's the medium here? Well, social media is a certain type of medium. And we have to think, well, what is it doing? What's built into the medium that causes this to happen? Because one, as she just said, it's an individual-based activity. Very rarely is there a large group of people huddled around one person's phone and they're all scrolling through Instagram at the same time and talking to each other. That just doesn't happen. You're on your phone by yourself usually. It's not like watching a ball game on a big screen television and there's 10 guys in the apartment all yelling at the TV. Like, yeah, you're looking at a screen, but a television doesn't have to be an individual-based activity like she said social media does. So built into social media is, well, it's telling you what its kind of value structure is, that this is for individuals. Okay, well, if it's individual based, you're already going to be isolated to a certain degree. So that's already built into the platform. Your social media is through a screen. So the medium through a screen informs how you interact with it and what the underlying value structure of that medium is. Well, this is something you look at through a screen. Well, what happens if something's through a screen? Well, it's not real, at least to a certain degree. All right, because it's not right in front of you that you're able to touch and talk to directly. It's always through a screen. And so there's a distance there. There's a separation from real reality there. So there's just two things that are, again, already inherent in these technologies that we just don't think about enough. And that's what the assignment I'm going to give you here shortly, it forces students to dive into that idea. So what we have to do is, with any technology, but in this case, social media, we have to look at, well, what is it actually? What is social media? It's an individual-based activity. It's through a screen. It's, it can be anonymous. Like you can kind of be a different person on it. Well, that creates a bit of a psychological disconnect, not only with other people, but also inside of yourself, because you can kind of play a different character depending on what platform you're on. So it does all sorts of things. And why does it do it? Because the medium is the message. It's the medium that does it. And it informs you how to act with it. So we'll talk about that more here in a second. But this education part, like, oh, well, what do we do about it? She doesn't give super specific examples. She said higher education leaders should take a proactive role in leading campaigns on their campuses about the impacts of heavy social media use. Yeah, because that's what college kids care about, are campaigns led by higher education leaders. Yeah, that's what we want, are campaigns led by administrators. That really gets the attention of those kids, right? I don't think students realize how much they're using social media, she said, and I don't think they realize the potential negative impacts. So increasing educational campaigns and messaging around that is important. Again, I have a better way of doing it. It's not around a campaign. You do it as an assignment, and that forces students to take a closer look, and I have a way. Ultimately, she said, institutions should prioritize in-person student experiences and use social media as a tool to support more of those connections. The irony here, institutions should prioritize in-person student experiences. Yeah, exactly. Yet what is every college doing? Pushing all of their kids into online courses and online activities. Use social media as a tool to support more of those connections. Maybe, except why would students want to be a part of in-person things if they think, they're not, but they think they can just get the same experience in the online version? It's easier, it's faster. I don't have to get dressed and get in my car and drive anywhere. I'll just join the social media group. Then I don't have to actually meet these people. Well, that's then what increases the loneliness. So you can't, this idea of just use it as a tool, I've said 1,000 times, you can go back and watch all my other episodes about this, that these things are not just tools. That's just not how it is. And again, the activity I'm going to describe here is going to show you why that's not the case. But yeah, the gall of saying, well, universities should really be prioritizing, in order to avoid this loneliness problem in social media usage, we should prioritize in-person experiences. Oh, by the way, we want you to join this online university where you're now going to be isolated and by yourself and lonely. It's like, yeah, you can't have it both ways. So it's easier said than done to just say, well, just use it as a tool. That's not how it works. So you need to think about this more deeply from if you're going to do this as from a university campaign standpoint. You're not thinking about it deeply enough. Lastly, she says, it really is about students assessing their own usage and understanding how they use social media and how that impacts their social needs. It's easy to say that spending 2 or more hours on social media makes you lonely, but it really is a subjective experience and each person needs to assess it for themselves. Yeah, that's the problem though, is they can't assess it. because they don't know. And even if they did know that this is what's causing them to feel this way, they're so addicted now to it that they can't break free from it. And so their loneliness becomes actually something that's they get used to it and they think it's normal. And they actually then use the social media as a further crutch because they're like, oh, now I'm feeling lonely. I need to be on social media even more so I feel connected with people, which then makes them even more lonely. So it's a catastrophic situation here that we're only now just starting to realize the real effects of these platforms. And the problem is not necessarily that, well, we just need to educate kids better. It's like, well, it depends on how you're doing that. You leading a campaign about let's build awareness about our social media usage and let's set our limits on our settings for only using it for 2 hours a day. Like that only goes so far. You need to get to the root of what this is so that you can better understand it. And then, yeah, ultimately students and anybody else has to just make their own choices about what they're going to do with it. But you're like me and you're like, yeah, I don't participate in any of that because I know what it is and I don't care about it. And the reason I know what it is because I've thought about it more deeply, and that's where we're going to go next. So that's, again, just an article from Inside Higher Ed, pretty clearly showing that social media usage from an hours per week basis is linked to increased loneliness among college students. How can we remedy this? Well, what I've done in my classes, I taught composition for many, many, many years. And once I started seeing my students become not necessarily addicted, though they certainly were, but just they gotten so used to using technologies for every single little thing in their life, I wanted to explore those ideas further. And so I went back to the research of Neil Postman. I talked about Marshall McLuhan a few minutes ago. Neil Postman was kind of a contemporary who talked about a lot of the same things. And one piece that I have students read is a lecture that he gave, a speech that he gave about 30 years ago now about the role of technology in culture. And I'm just going to summarize it for you here. I'll link it below so you can read the whole thing, but I'll just quickly summarize his 5 bullet points, and then I'll show you how it links to an assignment you can do. He says the title of his speech was 5 Things We Need to Know About Technological Change. And he's talked about this in other places, but I really like this speech because it condenses many of his key ideas that he talks about in Amusing Ourselves to Death or his book Technopoly or elsewhere. And he kind of mashes them all together in this one speech. So it's very useful and it's pretty short. So the thing that we have to think about with technology, and social media is just one form, but you can apply this in your class to any form, is he says, first of all, every technology has a trade-off. And so there's number 1. If you do not think about any technology as having, yes, benefits, that's why we use it, is because we see a benefit to it, but also having costs or trade-offs or downsides. If you don't think about that, then you're just going to go assume that this new technology is perfect. It's going to make my life so much better. There's no problems with it. I love it. It's great. And then suddenly we realize, holy cow, this thing is making me really lonely, or it's increasing my anxiety and depression, or it's making me sit around more. So now I'm obese, or whatever it is. No technology is perfect in every way. There's always a trade-off. So it's a very basic concept of economics. This is Thomas Sowell's idea that there are no solutions, there are only trade-offs. Well, technology fits with that as well, that there's no perfect solution to everything. All you can do is make a trade-off, and technologies do that. Yes, social media allows us to connect with people all over the world, and I can message them at any time, and I can post photos and videos, and I can, seemingly meet as many people as I would want. Okay, that sounds like a positive for some people. However, what are the trade-offs of it? Well, we're seeing some of those trade-offs. And so he says, I like to call it a Faustian bargain, that technology giveth and technology taketh away. There's always a trade-off. And he talks about even some of the most important technologies that have shaped human history. The printing press, for all its great things, it had some costs involved. Cars have shaped, completely reshaped the world, especially America. Yet we have, a fair amount of pollution problems because of cars. Our cities are kind of, concrete messes because we have so many cars. There's all sorts of costs and trade-offs. And so you have to think about that. If you only think, in this case, about social media as this great benefit that nothing could possibly go wrong, well, you're going to be in for some surprises that aren't going to make you feel very good. So number 1, always think of any technology as having trade-offs. The second, he says, there are advantages and disadvantages of new technologies that are never distributed evenly among the population. So we kind of think with many technologies, well, this will be good for everybody. Social media, anyone can use it. It's going to be great. Well, yeah, some people benefit from those social media platforms in better ways than other people do. Some people are more harmed than other people are. Some people can turn it into a business and they benefit greatly from it. Some people try to turn it into a business and they get even more depressed because they're failing at it. Like, the advantages and disadvantages are not even to everybody. It feels very democratic. Like, this is something accessible for all. This is going to flatten the world, and now we can talk to anybody. We can accomplish things faster. It's open to, there's no restrictions because anyone can use it. It's great. Well, that doesn't mean it benefits everybody the same way, and it doesn't mean it harms everybody the same way. So, as she said, it's subjective, and that's true. Everyone is different, but we have to think about that. You can't just assume, well, here's this new thing that all my friends are using. It must be great. Well, it might be great for them. It might not be great for you. Or it might be great for you, but not great for them in other ways they hadn't thought about. So there's always advantages and disadvantages dispersed among different people. Number 3, Postman says, embedded in every technology, there is a powerful idea, sometimes multiple. So again, there's an underlying philosophy of this. So in social media, what is it? Well, it's supposed to be that you can connect to anyone at any time. You can expand your friend group as large as you want. That's the powerful idea. It's like, okay, great. What other ideas, though, are embedded in it? Well, again, it's an individual activity, which could be positive, but also could be negative. It's through a screen, which could be positive because you can now see farther than just your immediate surroundings, but there's also some negatives to that. Again, it creates a distance between your reality and a perceived reality in screen world. So like there's all sorts of underlying values and philosophies embedded in it. One other philosophy is it wants more people to use it. So, there's an incentive built into it that the more people that use it, the better it is for everybody. Well, maybe not. So the builders of these platforms have placed in them their own values, their own ideas of what the platform should be. And so the platform tells you how to interact with it. And it conveys those beliefs to you. And it's up to you to decide, do I want to participate in them? Well, by the fact that you're using it, you already are participating in it, whether you want to or not. So again, you can't escape this. So you just have to understand, well, what is the underlying philosophy here? What is the powerful idea embedded in this technology, in this case, social media, that it's asking me to use? And to what extent am I going to use it? Number 4, he says, this is an important one. This is why it's not just a tool. Technological change is not additive, it's ecological. And he says, the best way I can explain this is what happens if we place a drop of red dye into a beaker of clear water? Do we have clear water plus a spot of red dye? Obviously not. We have new coloration to every molecule of water. And I would actually demonstrate this in class I'd bring in a bottle of water, just like I have right here. And I would squirt little flavoring in it, which I have here. And in this case, it's actually red. And I would see, okay, what's going to happen when I squirt this in? Is it going to be water and then a tiny dot of the red flavoring that I put in it? And of course, everyone's like, no, it's going to turn the whole bottle red. It's like, yeah, that's exactly what happens. You can't just insert a piece of technology and expect it to just stay over there in that little box. No, every technology it's not additive, it's ecological. It affects the entire environment. So even though you might think, well, I can use social media a little bit and I can just put it over here and I can put these rules in place and, the harmful effects aren't going to happen to me because I know how to keep it separated. It's like, maybe, except what you're not realizing is that's going to influence, without you thinking about it, every single part of your life. Okay. It just does. We've seen how you might think, well, I only sometimes post on Instagram. It's like, okay. But now when I see people taking photos, selfies, or, when they're out with their friends or they're at some beautiful place or some landmark or whatever, and they're taking pictures, why are you taking that picture? Is it because you just want to commemorate that event? Or is it because now you're going to post it on Instagram? Because the way you take that photo and what you do with it is going to change based on what your intentions are. And even though you're not using Instagram in that moment, the thought or the potential of using Instagram for a place to put your photographs has influenced the way you now take your selfie when you're standing, at the Eiffel Tower or at the Grand Canyon or with your friends at a party. Like, even if you're not using it, it has influenced your way of viewing the world. That now every photograph you take is not just a photograph, it's a possible Instagram post. Okay? So the ecology, the environment has been completely transformed because of the presence of this piece of technology. You can't separate out, well, no, I'm going to use technology here, but not here. Nope, it's going to influence you in some way, even just a little bit, just like when you drop a tiny drop of red liquid into this, the whole thing becomes red. The whole thing becomes transformed by that piece of technology. You can't avoid it. Lastly, is that these pieces of technology tend to become mythic. And this is always the most confusing one for my students. And the easiest way to explain it is that, especially for young people, but this happens to anybody, you eventually start to believe that it's always been this way, that you can't conceive of a world without it, that it was destined to turn out this way. That of course we have social media. Why wouldn't we? It's like, well, no, someone had to invent that. They had to design it and build it from scratch because it didn't exist before. This wasn't the natural progression of life. It took someone having an idea and implementing it. And so for young people, especially who have grown up in this world where social media has been a part of their life, their whole lives. If you're 18, you literally don't know a world where social media didn't exist. You think it's completely normal for everyone to be on social media. Whereas if you're older, you're like, no, this is a different type of world. The world was a very different place before social media happened, or before some other piece of technology happened. Just like the world was a very different place when all you had were horses and you didn't have cars. But for someone who's only lived in the world where cars exist, it's very hard to imagine a world without cars, right? So the technology becomes so much part of your existence. That's a mythic quality to it, that you can't conceive of a world without it, and you think it's always been this way, or that if it wasn't before, it was destined to become this way. Like this is the natural progression of things. It's like, no, it's not. There is no natural progression when it comes to technology. It takes someone inventing that idea and for it to then take root in the culture. So those are the 5 key ideas from Neil Postman in this speech he gave. And again, he's talked about it in other places as well. So I encourage you to go read other works by Neil Postman. But what I do in class, and I'll post the assignment below, is I have students, some semesters I have them pick, and I kind of limit them because I don't want them to all pick the same thing. Sometimes I've done it where I have certain pieces of technology in a hat and I have them draw one and they have to do that one. That one's a little trickier because some technologies are easier to analyze than others. But it does make them think harder. So you can do this a variety of ways. You can have them pick. You can make them do one that you pick. You can have kind of a paper in a hat situation where they all get something different. You can do this any way you want. But the key idea here is that you have students pick a technology and you have them write an essay that incorporates all of Postman's ideas. And for me, you can't use the ideas that Postman talks about. So he talks about cars a couple times here. So it's like, well, you can't do a car, but you need to pick something where you explain, here's how this technology has exhibited Postman's 5 ideas. And then you can go further with it and you can say, okay, well, what should we do about it? I've had students write an essay where it's kind of a persuasive essay as a warning, where what you're doing is you're telling someone who has not thought of these ideas like Postman has, and you're saying, look, here's a warning. You're using technology in this way. You think it's only great. You think you can isolate it to this little part of your life. You think it benefits everyone equally. You think these things, but you're wrong. Here's what actually happens with this technology. And from Postman's ideas, he argues this is actually what's going on. And so you need to be very careful. Maybe you need to limit your screen time. You need to not use that product, whatever the technology is, because it has the potential to be quite harmful for you. And you right now only think it's positive. You love that technology, you use it all the time, and you think it's only great. You're not seeing the possible downsides or future effects of this technology. So here's a warning. And so you use it as a persuasive essay where you say, I've studied this stuff from Neil Postman. I've analyzed and synthesized these ideas. And now I'm going to put all 5 of them into an argument to share with you because you don't know what I know. I've studied this. You haven't yet. Let me teach you this and let me persuade you to maybe take a different path with your technology usage. So that's one way you could do it. You could do it as purely an informative or analytical piece, or you could actually kind of morph it into a persuasive piece where you pretend they are giving advice to somebody and saying, hey, you need to be careful of this technology. Here's 5 ways it's influencing you that you haven't thought about. So be careful. Or here's how we've got on the wrong track or something like that. So it's a really good assignment. Students really enjoy it, even though it's writing and and a little bit of reading and having to think deeply, it really forces them to have to understand that these technologies are not just these pieces of magic that appeared out of nowhere and that always make our lives better, because that's how they think about it. So when that lady says in her article, or her research study, that, well, we need to educate our students on, time usage. We need to have campaigns on campus about how to use it better. It's like, well, what do those look like? How are you doing that exactly? Well, my assignment forces you to actually look specifically at a scholar, a theorist's idea about technology and the five kind of elements of that argument, and then apply it. And then hopefully students can use this new way of thinking about it to actually inform their practices, what they do in their day-to-day lives. You can't just leave it at the abstract and go, well, it's it's causing loneliness. Okay, well, what do we do about that? Well, limit. You need to. It's subjective, so everyone's different, but you just probably should limit your screen time. Well, why? I like it, and I don't feel that lonely, so why should I do it? Or even if I do feel lonely, whatever, I still like it, so I'm going to use it. Like, you got to get to the root of it, and Neil Postman's ideas do a way better job of that than just some broad educational campaign that an administrator would, propose on a campus. Students aren't going to listen to that. Do it in a class. Make it an assignment where they actually have to think deeply about this, and even better yet, write about it or make a speech about it, and then maybe they'll use that to influence their daily lives. Who knows? All right. So there's a little background research or new research on social media usage among college students. As we've suspected, it's not good. Lots more loneliness happening, and the correlation is pretty high that the more you use it, the worse it gets. And so what do we do about that? Well, here's an assignment you can implement in your classes. Again, I use this at the college level. You can totally use this at the high school level. You might even be able to introduce this at a lower level if you kind of walk your kids through it. Anyone can do it because everyone interacts with technology every day. So everyone will be able to have a frame of reference for what Postman's talking about. And it helps students take a closer look at their cell phones, the various internet platforms, including social media, other digital technologies that they all use, video games, like that. You can apply this to any technology, so it's really useful. So there's a little data for you today, as well as an assignment you can use in your English classes or other types of classes, whatever you want. Hope that was helpful. See you next time.